Morning, guys, and welcome to Dark Thoughts of Hope. My name is Teresa. So I've been having a rough time since I lost my ex. Every time I think that I'm over the hump of depression and on the road to happiness, someone I care about dies. I know that's supposed to be in life, but does it have to be every single year? When I was a kid, I used to go years without someone dying. Now it's like almost every other fucking month. I can't deal with it. It's too much. Just give me a fucking break from it. And I actually, I did have a break from it last night. I deposited, I don't know, like $70 into my account towards my car. And I put 20 into Borgata online and was playing like the dollar poker games. Blackjack games, I mean. And I was playing for like 4 hours on like $5 because I was playing with my family up in heaven. My cousin Matt, my grandma Whitman, my grandma Earls, my grandma Foley, all my relatives, my friends, John. We were all playing blackjack. And whenever I won, I'd snapshot it, the win. It was nice. I know it wasn't real, but it felt nice to at least imagine a night in heaven with them playing blackjack. Because honestly, that's what I miss the most. Playing blackjack with my grandma, laughing with my cousin, bullshitting with John and busting his balls. I don't know. All right. I'm going to read a little bit more of I Know What You Did Last Summer, guys. I can't remember exactly where I left off on chapter 2. So, bear with me, all right, guys? It's probably... Okay, I think I left off around here. Did it ever occur to the two of you, very broken, that this note might be about something else entirely? About something else? Julie repeated blankly. It doesn't exactly say anything, does it? It says, I know what you did. So, last summer was 3 months long, you know. You probably did plenty of things. You know what it means. No, I don't, and neither do you. Maybe the person who wrote it doesn't either. Maybe it's a joke. You know how kids are sometimes, making silly crank calls and writing people notes and things. So some kid decides to play a prank. He writes a dozen of these and sends them to people right out of the phone book. Do you think there's a person in the world who, getting a message like this, couldn't think back and think of something he did last summer he wasn't particularly proud of? Julie digested the argument in silence. Then she said, I'm not listed in the phone book under my own name. Our listing is under Mom's name, Miss Peter James. Well, then he didn't get you out of the phone book, but in some other way. Maybe it's a guy from school who has a crush on you and wants to get a reaction. Some fellow you cold-shouldered, or the kid who packs bags at the supermarket. There are plenty of creeps in the world who get their kicks out of getting girls all shook up. Barry's right about that, Julie. There was relief in Helen's voice. I've known some people like that myself. Why, you wouldn't believe the phone calls you get when you work on television. There was one guy who used to call me and he wouldn't say a word. He'd just breathe. I was ready to go out of my mind. I'd answer the phone thinking maybe it was Barry, and there would just be this heavy breathing in my ear. Well, Julie said slowly, I suppose that's possible. I never thought about something like that. If the thing last summer hadn't happened, if you'd gotten this note and there wasn't something that came straight into your mind, you'd have thought about it, wouldn't you? Maybe, yes, I guess I would have. She drew a long breath. Do you really think that's it? It's just somebody's idea of a joke? Sure, Barry told her firmly. What else could it be? Look, if somebody did know, he wouldn't be writing silly notes, would he? He'd go to the police. And it wouldn't be now, Helen said. It would have been back last July when the thing actually happened. Why would anybody wait 10 months to do something if he knew? I don't know, Julie said. When you put it that way, it doesn't sound likely. It isn't likely, Barry said. You've got yourself all tied up in knots over nothing. And Helen, you're just as bad. Phoning me like that. You had me thinking something awful had happened. I'm sorry, Helen said contritely. Julie called me about this at noon, and I reacted just the way she did. We both just panicked. Well, on panic, Barry told her. He got to his feet. Helen's lovely apartment, which always before had seemed so spacious and luxurious, was suddenly unbearable and suffocating. I've got to get going. Why? Don't you stay a while, Helen suggested. I've got a whole hour and a half before I have to leave for the studio. That's an hour and a half that I don't have. I told you this was a closed week and I have to study. He turned to Julie. Do you need a ride? I can drop you off at your house on my way back to campus. No thanks, Julie said. I don't need a ride. I've got Mom's car. Don't you want to stay, Julie? Helen asked her. We haven't talked for ages. There must be a lot for us to catch up on. Another time, okay? I've got a date picking me up at 8. Take it easy then, Barry said. It was good seeing you. He turned back to Helen. I'll be seeing you, Heller. Do you want to plan on doing something Monday? Helen suggested. It's Memorial Day, which usually means a party of some kind around this place. It depends on how much studying I get done over the weekend. I'll be calling you, I promise. She started to get up to walk him to the door, but he waved her back down. The last thing he felt like after this was an affectionate farewell scene with Julie as an audience. He let himself out, leaving the two girls together, and went down the steps and back along the side of the pool. The underwater lights were on now, and the crowd of exhibitionists had thinned a little. The perpetual party that always started around the pool on Friday evenings had broken, as it generally did, into several smaller parties, most of which had moved upstairs into private apartments. Gas lights flickered along the walkway, and the greenery in the planters rustled slightly in the faint evening breeze. Barry got into his car and turned the key in the ignition. Somewhere in the parking lot, another engine came to life. Sitting quiet, barely let the motor idle. There was no movement that he could see among the rows of parked cars. Coincidence, Barry told himself impatiently. I'm acting as uptight as those crazy girls. He flicked on the headlights and threw the car into gear and pulled out of the lot onto Madison Ave. He drove slowly back to the campus, glancing occasionally into the rearview mirror. There were lights behind him, but then it was early on a weekend evening, a time when streets were always busy with traffic. When he turned onto Campus Drive, the car behind him turned as well. But then he slowed and pulled over to the curb. It went on past him without hesitation, and disappeared around the curve at the end of the street. Crazy, Barry repeated to himself. Why should I suddenly start thinking people are following me just because Julie James pushes the panic button? Like I told her, there are all kinds of cranks in the world, writing mixed up letters, but he kept having the uneasy feeling that there was a pair of eyes boring into his back right between the shoulder blades when he left the car in the lot and walked back across the lawn to the entrance of the fraternity house. All right, so that's the end of chapter 2. I'll read a little bit of chapter 3, just the first couple. All right, chapter 3. There was a car parked in front of the James's house when Julie pulled into the driveway. Her first thought was that Bud had come early, but a second glance told her that this was not Bud's cream-colored Dodge. The front door of the house stood open, and through the screen, voices floated to her as she crossed the lawn and mounted the steps to the front porch. One voice was her mother's, lifted with unaccustomed gaiety. The second voice stopped her. For a long moment, Julie stood frozen, caught and held, unmoving. Then, her mother, who was seated on the far side of the living room, facing the doorway, glanced up and saw her. Julie, look who's here. It's Ray. Julie opened the screen and went into the room, drawing the solid door closed behind her. Hi, she said a bit stiffly. I saw the car outside, but I didn't recognize it. It's my dad's, Raymond Bronson said, getting to his feet. He stood there awkwardly, as though wondering what sort of greeting to offer. Then he held out his hand. How are you, Julie? Okay, Julie said. Fine. She went forward and put her hand in his, holding it firmly, then releasing it. It was a harder hand than she remembered. I didn't know you were back. Your last card was from the coast. You said you were working on some kind of fishing boat. I was, Ray said. The guy who owns the boat has a kid who works with him in the summers. There wasn't room for both of us. That's too bad, Julie said, because she couldn't think of anything else to say. All right, I'm going to leave off here just because I want to save the rest of this. I'll bookmark where I was, though. Nothing else to say. I'll put a little mark next to it. I just wanted to say that last night, whether they were with me or not, it was fun. I got to pretend that I was spending time with my cousin and laugh and joke with him. And it was nice. I mean, yeah, I know he obviously wasn't here, but what's the fun in pretending, you know? And for a while, I actually did feel like he was with me. So, thanks for letting me have that last night, God. God bless.